Welcome to Brain Wellness, the podcast. I'm your host, Mandy NP. Each episode will bring you a new topic or interview related to brain health and wellness as part of my mission to help you on the path to a healthier, happier brain. So, let's get started. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Brain Wellness, the podcast. My guest today is Minsan Sauers. Minsan is a neurofeedback therapy practitioner at Minnesota Brain Solutions, a BrainCore certified provider in central Minnesota. Minsan came into the field of neurofeedback with an extensive background in enterprise information technology and firsthand experience with stress and the effect it has on the brain, body, and relationships. Minsan is passionate about helping people realize how their brain has been affected by their circumstances and providing tools to make tangible changes. Thanks for joining me today, Minsan.
Thank you, Mandy. So excited to be here.
Yeah. So I will kind of refer people back to like way at the beginning of my show, episode 5 or 6. I was going to write it down and I forgot, when Melissa Hergert was on the show with me and we first talked about neurofeedback and BrainCore. And that's when you started following the show and we got connected. And I'm so glad that you did, because you helped me grow quite a bit in my own brain healing response through neurofeedback. So I'm excited to have you on today to talk about this.
Yeah, that was so wonderful. Melissa's one of our mentors and helped get us started. And so when she was up on your show, I was so excited to see that you were even in Minnesota.
Yeah, yep. So I like having those Minnesota contacts as well. So very, very cool. So I always start off, my first question is always, I want to know a little bit more about you. What's your story? How did you get to doing what you are today?
Yeah. Okay. Well, it sort of starts with what was in my bio there about I have a long history of large corporate IT or information technology. And the truth is, every year they would ask us, how is stress affecting your life? You get those corporate surveys. and I started in that when I was in my early 20s. And of course, every year I said, not at all, I'm fine. But then after a couple of decades of that, I started realizing that I wasn't fine. Stress was affecting me. It led me to make some bad lifestyle choices, things like getting 4 or 5 hours of sleep a night and consuming way too much caffeine and sugar and other things, just trying to mediate that stress in my life. And it wasn't working, and so I started making some changes, started making these realizations, but it kind of led me on this path of, I hate to use these buzzwords, but a path of self-discovery of learning why was I behaving that way and why were these things happening. And along came someone who did brain training at another clinic here in Minnesota, and they had wonderful results. They were just so excited about it and wanted to start a business down here closer to where we live to make it more accessible to more folks, offering brain training. And so, I said, oh, that's okay, that's interesting. I'll start researching it, started digging into it. And I started finding all the studies, many studies that are out there on neurofeedback, and eventually went to training with BrainCore Company and came to a lot more understanding. But it really hit home when I did my first brain map on myself. And all of the assumptions I had made about how my brain worked and what kind of level I was operating on were completely wrong. The brain map was the complete opposite of what I expected it to show. But it all made sense. Once I started understanding what was on the brain map, I started making the connections. Oh, that's why I make these decisions, and that's why I react this way or that way. So it's it's kind of a long, convoluted story, but it involves the past 25 years of my career. So.
Mm-hmm. That's a cool way. I love getting the why and the how you got to where you are, because I think that always makes us more passionate in what we do, especially when we have that personal connection. So you saw your own brain map and you had the opportunity to make some changes, do some different things, or understand your own brain better.
Right.
So even doing neurofeedback or doing brain mapping isn't necessarily just for somebody who's had a brain injury like myself. It can be for anyone to help understand your brain better and how your brain works.
Right. There are so many instances, just to back up a little bit what the brain map is, it's a
Yeah.
QEEG, the quantitative electroencephalogram. It's basically just measuring the electricity that your brain is putting out. And it's simple and non-invasive and painless, relatively painless, aside from the conductive gel in your hair. But the idea is to measure your brainwave activity and compare it to our known database of how your brain ought to look, or at least close to it. And when we do that, we can draw connections, inferences, as to the way that your brain is operating, and then the symptoms that you're noticing in your life. Okay, so that's what, in a high level, that's what the brain map is and what it does. And there's a couple reasons to do that. One is to figure out what you need to change, or what needs to change. But it's to the point now where I think everybody should have a map, and perhaps even regular maps, especially if you're getting involved in things like contact sports. It's a great idea to have that baseline map of how your brain looked before the sport. And if you incur an injury of some kind, let's do another map and see what's changed, and see what kind of impact that had. No
Hmm.
pun intended.
Yeah. Yeah, I kind of wish now that I would have had one done before my accident so I could have seen what
Right.
my brain actually looked like, because it's fascinating to see how the different brain waves may have been affected by my injury.
Right, right. And not just physical injury.
Yeah.
There's other things that affect the way that our brain works, from, substance use, to emotional trauma, or any number of things.
Hmm. And you can see signs of like ADHD and things on brain mapping too. So it's not even like an injury, but just that biological
Right,
thing that's there.
right. Yeah,
Yeah.
hereditary things. Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's again, we can't make a diagnosis of any
Right.
particular condition with a brain map, but we can definitely draw correlations, that, okay, just about every single person who has ADHD, their brain looks like this. Well, okay.
Yeah. Yeah. Yep. A similar thing to that, when I was working with functional medicine years ago, I had done some celiac testing and was
Oh
tested
yeah,
as negative, but I had the genetics of somebody who had celiac. So it
sure.
was kind of funny because when I tested, I was off gluten. So you're not going to get a good accurate test. But it's that same kind of
Yeah,
thing. You have those similarities. So everybody that physician had seen that had celiac had the same genetics that I did. So it's
sure.
making that same kind of correlation. You can't really give the diagnosis, but you can make that correlation and say, yes, you have what looks like this.
Right, right.
Yep.
All right.
So these are our recommendations and how you can work on it. So that's where neurofeedback comes in. So can you give a little kind of quick little one liner on the neurofeedback like you did on the brain mapping?
Sure, sure. So what neurofeedback is then, is the computer giving your brain feedback as to how it's operating or how it's functioning. All right, and it does this in real time. We connect a couple of electrodes to your head and your ears, connect that to the computer, and then while you are watching something, let's you say a Netflix or Disney or whatever, it doesn't matter. But while you're watching something on the computer, your eyes are glued to the screen, hopefully, if it's interesting enough. And the computer is going to change how the screen looks depending on what your brain is doing. Simply to give your brain the thumbs up or the thumbs down. It will reward your brain for good behavior, by letting you see the show, or dissuade the bad behavior by dimming the show and lowering the volume and those sorts of things. And it does this all very quickly because your brain is constantly moving, up, down, sideways, whatever it's doing. But the computer is going to react to it, because computers are powerful enough to do that now. And over time, and really not very long, we start seeing within the first 15 minutes that the brain starts reacting to that training. And it starts saying, okay, well, if I want to see the show, then if I do this, I get to see the show. All right, I'll do that.
Mhm.
And we start seeing the brain waves actually moving in the right direction. And of course, our brains are just like the rest of us. They take a while to develop a habit, and to make something a long-lasting change. So at the end of the first session, your brain is going to go right back to doing whatever it used to do before.
Mhm.
And it might do that for the second, third, fourth, fifth sessions. But after repetition, After enough training sessions, your brain starts to make those changes while you're not doing a training session. So even when you go home later on after a training session, it's still going to be making those changes and still adapting. And with enough training sessions, it makes it part of its daily routine. And we no longer have to reinforce.
Yeah.
So the big word is the operant conditioning.
Yeah. Yes, retraining that brain. And there are some protocols that just do auditory too, right?
There are the vast majority of what we do is with the eyes open, the visual training. There is a specialized training called alpha theta. And there's actually a couple others too that are done with the eyes closed and you're just listening to sounds. And you're still connected to the computer, and the computer is going to change the sounds depending on what your brain is doing. And it's all in an effort to guide your brain into a specific state so that it can take care of things that it needs to naturally. The main purpose of alpha theta, that alpha theta state, is to get you into a half awake and a half asleep state. And in that state, your brain is then able to take the memories that it's been storing in a buffer. It'll keep these memories in the amygdala until it has a chance to process them. And some memories, even the way I understand it, is that they get tagged with a certain high frequency signal that gets tagged onto the memory. And the brain just says, I need to deal with that later. and, and the time when it deals with it is usually as we're falling asleep. In a well-regulated sleep pattern, we glide naturally to sleep, and we kind of spend some time in that half awake, half asleep state called the hypnagogic state. And that's when our brain takes those memories, moves them up to the cortex, processes them, decides what to do with them, and moves them into our past, puts them into the file cabinet of the brain, and then allows us to move on. Unfortunately, so many people are not getting the right kind of sleep. They're not getting the regulation in their sleep that they need, and their brain is not getting a chance to do that integration that it needs to do. So the alpha theta training attempts to put your brain into that state for the 30 minutes and to just give it a chance to do what it wants to do and to let it do its own house cleaning. And it's been highly successful in helping people to be able to move those memories from the current crisis center of the brain back to the file cabinet history of the brain. And that helps people struggling. There's been a lot of studies actually in helping people struggling with alcohol addiction, because oftentimes, it's because of an unresolved traumatic event in their life. And being able to resolve those memories takes away, helps, or at least helps them to resist that urge to consume alcohol in excess. So,
Fascinating. Fascinating.
yeah.
I kind of, when I've described that process to people before, I've used the movie analogy, the Inside Out movie, when the marbles
Yes,
get filed at the end of the night, and you have that time to file it. So you need to get into that right sleep state. In neurology, I've
exactly.
talked to my patients about sleep for years, trying to get them to sleep better. Um, yeah, 'cause
Yeah, yeah.
your brain needs that. So.
It does. It does. And of course it's the number of hours of sleep. But it's not just that, it's also the pattern of sleep, of light sleep and dark deep sleep, sorry.
Yeah.
And that it's not just the number of hours of sleep, but it's the balance of light sleep to deep sleep to REM sleep. And most of us don't even know if we're not getting the right kind of sleep in the right amounts. And so it's wonderful that there's technologies now like smartwatches and Aura rings and things that
Yeah.
we can use to find out, okay, what is going on with my sleep?
Yeah, yeah. I love data. So any of those things that can give you data about how you're doing and
Yeah,
what you can potentially improve on. There's always room for improvement, it seems. So
yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
Now, what are some of the more, I think you probably mentioned some of them, but what are some of the more common conditions that you encounter when you're doing neurofeedback and brain mapping?
Yeah, yeah. So the vast majority of people that are well, and this is even backed up by the Google searches. I can see which Google searches are landing people at my website, and the vast majority is either anxiety, depression, or ADHD. That's what people are searching for, what they're struggling with, and that's how they end up finding us. And then, of course, there are other things that neurofeedback helps with, but these are the things that are most prevalent nowadays, it seems. But the other things too, it does tend to improve things like memory recall or memory function. And of course, mood regulation. We talked a little bit about that, and which is closely tied with behaviors.
Mhm. Mhm.
But then also simply for peak performance. There are folks who want to excel and operate at the highest level that they possibly can, and neurofeedback helps you do that too. Probably the most well-known story around here is Kirk Cousins. If anyone watched the Netflix series Quarterback, I believe it was episode 4. It showed Kirk doing neurofeedback and how
Oh, very
he's
cool.
for years, yeah, and for many years he's been using that as a way to help him perform at his very best. It's a little less exciting to use him as an example now that he's no longer a Viking, but
There is that. There is
yeah.
that. Um, Now, of all the people you've seen, does everybody benefit from neurofeedback, or does everybody see the same degree of improvement when they do neurofeedback?
Yeah. So everybody does benefit. It oftentimes I will liken it to going to the gym and working out. There's very few people who would not benefit from going to the gym and working out. And so that's the same case with neurofeedback. There's very few people who would not benefit from it.
Sure.
But of course, the degree to which one benefits depends on a whole lot of factors. Not everyone who lifts weights becomes a bodybuilder.
Mhm.
And it's the same with brain training. Some people are just gifted with more flexible brains and more capable brains, and that's wonderful. But we can all be better, and neurofeedback helps you achieve a little bit better than where you were before, and in some cases, many cases, a lot better.
Yeah. Yeah. And then when we did mine, we at the end of it, you said that I would still continue to get better. So can you talk a
Yeah,
little bit about how that works?
yeah. So that's been our experience, is that uh, the brain training process is teaching your brain a new skill, or at the very least, it's breaking it out of a bad habit that it had and allowing it to explore new directions. And the thing is, at the end of the training period, your brain has learned that skill, but it needs some time to implement and to put it into practice. And as it does, it's going to get better and better at doing it. We found that many people are coming back to us and saying 3, 4, 5, 6 months later, that I'm still seeing improvements. Things are getting even better than when I first stopped training. So yeah, your brain is a marvelous instrument.
Mhm.
And it is so capable, and it's amazing what if we can get it out of the bad habit that it got into, the rut, and set it on a new direction. That as long as something else bad doesn't happen, it will keep going in that good direction.
Very cool. Very cool. How about the time commitment? What does it look like for time commitment for folks who want to do neurofeedback?
Yeah. So as I alluded to earlier, it takes repetition,
Yeah.
many training
Yeah.
sessions. And what we have found is for the average folks, they need at least 30 training sessions. And that is really, I consider kind of a minimum.
Mm-hmm.
And in fact, if a person is dealing with extenuating circumstances, if we have other things going on in their life, like bad sleep and diet habits that we need to address, or if there's an ongoing trauma, if they're living in a difficult home environment, uh, we need to address those things, of
Mm-hmm.
course. But these things are also going to make neurofeedback training take longer before we see effects. Or see the level of change that we want to see. So that's part of the brain mapping process. Not only the brain map, but we also have intake surveys that we do that help us to get a good estimation of how long of a training program you're going to need. But yeah, you should consider 30 as a minimum. The training sessions are a half-hour long. And if you're training, whether you're training at home or here in the office, you do need to train at least twice a week. Otherwise, the brain kind of forgets what we were working on, and you're starting over every time. So, and of course, you can do more than that, but most people's schedules don't allow for more than
Mm-hmm.
twice a week.
Mm-hmm.
So that's yeah, that's kind of the level of commitment that it takes, and we try to be upfront about that so that you're not getting into this and then partway through having to bail out.
Yeah.
'Cause that's just a shame.
Yeah. Yeah. And is there anyone that would be harmful to do neurofeedback, or are there any conditions that could be made worse with it?
Yeah, yeah. Well, so first of all, we typically don't work with anybody younger than 7 or 8 years old. It's just for one thing, their brains are still developing, and there's a lot of sitting still.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's going to be tough for the young people. But once we get up into that 7, 8, 9 years old, that's a great time to train. So that's all right. But anyone who has had a recent brain injury should not do brain training. There's inflammation going on there, and things are so sensitive that we certainly don't want to be, you wouldn't go to the gym and lift
Mhm.
weights with an injured arm. It's,
Shouldn't. Yeah.
yeah, you really should. Let's let the inflammation go down at least.
Okay. What kind of
um,
time
so,
frame would you recommend waiting on that?
well, to be safe, we actually look for 8 weeks, really.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah. Most people, the inflammation swelling has probably gone down before that.
Sure.
But let's just be safe. Say 8 weeks.
Sure. Sure. Any other conditions or any other things that you would want to wait or not do it?
Yeah, well, and some of them have more to do with the severity of the issues or the multiplicity of things that they're struggling with, where it may not just be a good fit. For one thing, it is tiring on the brain to do neurofeedback. It's an exertion on the brain, and if it looks like that is going to cause more stress or more problems in this person's life, it may not be a good idea to train at this time. But yeah, we try to identify, there are things you should really be working with another provider on this area first, and then let's come back to neurofeedback. So yeah, that's kind of part of the intake process.
Yeah. Good call. Yeah, there were a couple days that I know I was having really rough days with my TBI recovery that I didn't do my training because of that
Mhm.
same exertional thing you just mentioned.
Yeah,
So I think, and I was having a conversation with this about somebody else earlier today too, is just listening to your body too, and
right,
knowing yourself, knowing how you feel and how you do, because it might not be a good. There are so many things that we can do for our brain, but it's
right.
knowing when to do it and when you're doing too much.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
That's hard for people to listen to. Myself included sometimes. Um,
Yes, yeah. We
yeah,
we
yeah.
tend to want to do it all and do it right now, right?
Heck yeah, do it all. But then it's kind of like drinking from a fire hose and you're getting a little bit too much and you need to back it off a little bit.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
yeah, yep. Do you have any events or anything coming up, or anything you wanted to share with our listeners?
Yeah, probably the most exciting thing is we are actively pursuing, and it looks like it's going to happen by October 1st, of opening a second office. And we're looking over in the Sartell area, which is a suburb of St. Cloud.
Yeah.
And so we're currently located in Cold Spring, which is 20 miles west of St. Cloud. So this will be a second office closer to the St. Cloud Metro, just making it more accessible to folks over there. And so I'll be splitting my time between the offices, but it'll be great to be able to reach out to more folks in that direction.
Yeah, very cool. Very cool. And then how can people find you if they want to learn more?
Yeah, so our website is www.mn, as in Minnesota, brainsolutions.com. You can certainly email me at info@mnbrainsolutions.com, or just give me a call the old fashioned way, 320-686-0171.
Okay. And then I think you're on the social medias and stuff too, right?
Absolutely. Yep. We have a
Mm.
Facebook page, Instagram, LinkedIn. Um, Not on TikTok yet.
That's
And yeah, also not on X.
yeah,
Yeah.
I'm not on that one either. But I'll include all of those links in the show notes as well. So if people are driving, they're not writing anything down. Otherwise, you'll have more clients coming to you from injuries.
Yeah,
So
that's not how we want to get them.
yeah, no. Any last things you want to add today? Any last little tidbits?
Yeah, the only other thing that I was thinking about is just this is a lot of this is about drawing analogies, trying to understand something that we can't look at our brains, at least not very easily.
Yeah.
But for me, coming from the IT background, I used to be the guy who you would call and they would send out because your computer wasn't working right.
Yeah.
And I would get there, and a lot of times the problems were self-induced. They went to spammy websites and clicked on the blinky banners,
Mhm.
and the computer needed some cleanup and some maintenance. We needed to purge the cache and get rid of that stuff. And yeah, we can absolutely draw that connection in our own lives. A lot of times, what needs to change is habits and lifestyle changes. Um, but it's difficult to make those changes, as we all know. And neurofeedback tends to help us to be able to make those changes, to give us a little bit more bandwidth, or just to develop the flexibility to make some of those changes and actually implement them. Um, in the computer world, sometimes it is just bad hardware. So, you had a power surge and it blew out a component, and we replace that component. Unfortunately, when your brain gets a power surge because of an accident, we can't just replace the bad components. But our brains are marvelous in that they can be retrained. They can work around the injury. They can improve whatever they've got to work with. And that's what neurofeedback helps your brain to do, to be able to just improve what you've got.
Yeah. I love that connection. I love that analogy. In a way, you're still troubleshooting the computers because you're troubleshooting the brains now. So
I am. Yep.
yeah. Very, very good. I'm sure I could probably come up with many more questions to ask you, but I think that was a really good conversation for today. Thank you so much for being here, Minsan.
Perfect. Thank you, Mandy.
Yeah. Thanks for tuning in to this episode of Brain Wellness, the podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, I encourage you to subscribe, like, and share this with others to help me continue on with my mission to help people live healthier, happier lives. Go to www.brainwellnesssolutions.com to see what I'm up to and get links to all the social medias there. See you next time.